welcome to You Didn't Get the Memo show. I'm your host, Gloria Bailey Ray, and as always, I have a fantastic show for you today. I want to let you all know, especially if you're new, You Didn't Get the Memo is about providing you, the viewer, with relevant, factual, mainstream information to help you be informed and to make informed decisions. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. The You Didn't Get the Memo show, we are airing live right now on Facebook, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn. Every Thursday, 5 p.m., set your watch, set your clock, set your alarm to be sure and tune in at 5 p.m., that's Pacific Standard Time, to the You Didn't Get the Memo show. Now, today's show is actually being brought to you by the Berkshire Hathaway Drysdale Team Realtors of Georgia Richardson and Angela Smith. Now, let me tell you a little bit about You Didn't Get the Memo show. It's an interactive show. So if you have questions or comments, you can place them in the comment section and we'll do our very best to respond to them. I want to give a quick shout out to all of my viewers, both nationally and internationally. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. Now, my guest today is Mr. Tyehimba Jelani, who is the president and founder of Tyehimba and Associates. He is a financial literacy educator. He is a nonprofit consultant, and he's a community organizer. Mr. Tyehimba conducts financial education classes for high school, for college students, and adults that need assistance with money management principles. Can I say that again? And adults who may need assistance with money management principles. So I want to ensure that you guys get locked in and loaded. And again, remember, every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, every Tuesday, You Didn't Get the Memo show airs live. So without further ado, let me welcome to the show my guest, Mr. Tyehimba Jelani. Tyehimba, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to even talk to you. I'm so excited. Thank you for tuning in and joining us.
Thank you for having me, Miss Gloria. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, look, I believe in let's jump right in. Let's kind of, level set the playing field here so people want to know what they need to know about Mr. Tyehimba Jelani. So let's just start with you telling the viewers a little bit about your backstory.
A little bit about me. Born and raised in Berkeley, California. So I'm here local. Went to Berkeley High School, finished in 1988. Shout out to the class of 88. It was a great year. From Berkeley High, I went to Cal State Hayward, now Cal State East Bay. So going to Cal State Hayward was probably one of the best decisions of my life. I have many long-term friends through my organizing on campus with the Black Student Union, with the National Association of Black Accountants. So that's really where I cut my teeth, if you will. From an organizing standpoint, from a relationship building standpoint, was at Cal State. From there, graduated with a degree in accounting in 1994. Went on, spent a very short time as an auditor in an accounting firm, moved from there to project management. And then now I've landed in IT. So it's like I'm doing everything but accounting, even though accounting kind of is a common thread that runs through all of those disciplines.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Believe it or not, like you said, we were talking prior to the show, and one of the things is, you know what? We've got to be able to do more than just one thing. And what I'm hearing you say, all of those, because if you really think about it, even dealing with IT, it still requires, from my
Yes.
standpoint, some mathematical stuff that all
Absolutely.
goes into it. So everything revolves around math. But thank you for that. And you say the best class. Shout out to 88. All right. Okay. All right, Berkeley High for sure. All right. So, how did you get started in the financial industry of teaching kids about finance? That was what really intrigued me, is because this is one of the things that I find that a lot of our children are missing, is that one piece. And I do believe starting them young, and I could be wrong, but it's
Mhm.
definitely something that we need to talk about. So tell our viewers how you got started in the financial industry of teaching kids about finance.
So it really came about as a result of my organizing efforts with NABA, again, National Association of Black Accountants. So that was the lane, it was accounting, finance, that was the discipline. So when it came time to find something to do that was a give back, if you will, then it only made sense that, I lined it up with something that I was already familiar with. My motto is, look, pick one issue to get involved with, to align yourself with, to align with a different group of individuals, and dedicate some time to that. I believe we all have a responsibility to put in some work. And I think you should put in some work doing something that you already enjoy. So for me, I already enjoyed accounting. I enjoyed working with young people. Again, that was something we did in NABA. So, and I'll say this, from experience, I did not have any financial education classes K through 12. My true introduction to personal financial literacy, if you will, was going to Cal State Hayward, walking through campus, stopping at a table of someone from a credit card company, and me signing my name on the dotted line and then getting that credit card in the mail. So that was the introduction to financial education. And I don't want those coming behind us to have to go through that same experience, because I jokingly say credit card is the devil, but it really is and can be. It's a tool that you need to know how to utilize.
Right.
And if you don't know how to use it, it will use you. So that's really my drive, is to try to give information earlier, so hopefully they can avoid some of the mistakes that I made.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point. I think back to college, and the same thing. You have people, they're out there, and we can get you a credit card. You can get this, and unfortunately, and I would like to think and hope that a lot more college students, high school students, that they are a bit more savvy about
Mhm.
getting a credit card and just only using it to buy pizza. you
Right.
know I mean, because that was the thing. You buy pizza and beer, and then next thing you know, you're in debt up to your neck. And it's kind of like the same thing as it relates to getting financial aid loans, right?
Yeah.
A lot of kids use that, and then somebody somewhere told them, oh, you can get a financial aid loan, and that's how you're going to live for the next year or so. And not realizing you come out of college and you're in so much debt, um,
Absolutely.
that you really and truly, and that's important. If you're in a lot of debt and you want to move out of your folks' place, you first thing people check is your credit.
Absolutely. Yes, this is true.
And if you got all these student loans and credit cards and all this other stuff, nothing in life is free. I always like to say. So I'm happy to hear you say that, and talk about the fact that that's one of the big things. And
Mhm.
having experienced it, I always say I can't tell you about something if I haven't gone through it myself. And not only are you, talking the talk, but you've walked that, and you know exactly how people can get into trouble. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And you kind of led into it by saying that by signing your name, I tell you, it's a powerful thing.
It
And you
is.
signed on that dotted line. And as a result of that, that was your introduction to money management. But
Mhm.
let's talk about why it's so important to learn about money, because what you got and what people need to get now. And the fact that, look, shout out to the teachers if they are giving any kind of financial literacy when these kids start from elementary, grade school,
Mhm.
middle school, high school. We've got, and we'll get into that, but just the fact to hear you say that, I mean, so let's just start with talking about the importance of learning about money, Tahimba.
Okay. So as we all know, it makes the money, it makes the world go around, especially here in the United States. It's about money. And let me step back. Let me say this. I begin my sessions with having the students, challenging the students to look internally, or adults, whoever I'm working with. First up, who are you? What are you passionate about? What's important to you? What's your relationship with money now? So all of those elements can kind of make it, or actually make a determination on how you spend money, how you relate to money. So I start there. It's kind of from the inside out. And I say managing money is about managing your behavior. So once we get that out the way and they understand that this really does come back to them, then we talk about options. This all comes back to options. We want you to be familiar with money because it gives you more options to say no. You can have some control over what you say yes to, but the flip side, being in a financial situation that does not give you as much options, or as many options, excuse me, now your back is against the wall. And when your back is against the wall and that unexpected event happens, because it happens to all of us, something's going to break, something unexpected is going to fall in your lap. Do you have the funds to absorb that expense? And these are the conversations that we have to have earlier. That way, as the young people get older, they'll be better positioned to absorb some of life challenges that they didn't plan for.
Hmm. Yeah, you, and it's so interesting the things that you talk about that maybe I'm hoping that college students, high school students, parents, grandparents, shout out to San Antonio for always being here in the house. But I do think that it is so important that you talk about you're in college, you got a car, right? Cars don't run on fumes.
Do not.
They need to have maintenance. They need to have tires. I mean, all of these things. And so think about that when you don't have the means to fix or replace or repair something. This is why having an understanding about money is really, really so critical. And if you spend it all on, going out to happy hour and paying for, a round of drinks for all your friends and your credit card is maxed out, who do you look to? Where do you go? And that's really important. And I have to say, I applaud the fact that this is a platform that you're on and you're so passionate about. I really and truly appreciate that. So, what would you say, Tahimba, is the ideal age to start teaching children about money matters and why?
Ideal age, I
Yeah.
would say parents should start having those conversations as early as possible. There are always teaching moments. Anytime, there's, we've all been young, we've been children. So we want what we want when we want it. And we think money grows on trees until someone explains to us that it does not. So certainly, middle school is where we started because we was like, okay, that's a good age. But truth be told, they should be starting earlier. And states that have personal financial literacy as a part of their educational curriculum, K through 12 curriculum, they're starting in kindergarten. The kindergarten. They're finding ways in which to introduce these financial concepts much earlier. But I would say if you really made me say for sure, I would go with middle school. Definitely by sixth grade, we should be having these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our viewers actually says as soon as they are asking to put
Right.
in
Yes.
your fast
Yes.
food. I love
Right.
that.
Yes.
Absolutely. That is so key. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, the question I'd like to pose and allow you to marinate on a little bit is talk about the importance of teaching children the differences between wants and needs. And I have a specific reason for asking you that question. So I want to say to our viewers, guys, thank you so much for hanging in here and for tuning in. We appreciate it. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be right back. So don't go anywhere.
You know, a lot of people say when you're going somewhere, you don't want to look back. But I beg to differ. I can't lie and say it was easy. I looked at everything in a different light. I realized it started with me going back and getting my high school diploma.
STEM is precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to load their minds. Dare to explore. Dare to STEM. Learn more at She Can STEM.
All right, if you guys are just tuning in to You Didn't Get the Memo show, my awesome guest, Mr. Tyehimba Jelani, who is the president and founder of Tyehimba and Associates. Look, we're talking about something that should be near and dear to all of our hearts as it relates to financial literacy, and especially around our young people, our youth and young adults. Before we went to break, I posed the question to my guests to talk about what's the importance of teaching children between wants and needs? And I asked that question in particular because it just seems like it's easier just to give a kid whatever they want, right? Maybe for me, and I've been a child, I have grandchildren, but I look at all the commercials that are targeting these kids, and it's I want, I want, I want, I want, I want, and yet on the flip side, you see children in other places where they are going out and they're doing community service. It's not the focus of wanting a gift. And I'm like, we've actually become so commercial, the country has, that the focus isn't on the birth of Jesus Christ. It's on, how many gifts can I get? I get gifts for Christmas. I get gifts for my birthday. I get gifts for Valentine's Day. So I would just like to hear your take on the importance of teaching the difference to our children about wants versus needs.
So the difference or the importance of teaching it is we need to establish priorities. We need to help our young people establish priorities. And the way you start with that is, okay, what do you need? What do you actually need to survive? What's a nice to have? That's the want. And we have to be willing and able to tell them no so that they can start to understand the value of a dollar and prioritizing what's important. Now, for me, that's the lead into the conversation around a budget. Have you ever developed a budget is the first question that I'm really asking to the class participants. How much money do you have coming in? How much money is going out? How much is left over? That's where it begins. So even if you're young, middle school, they certainly don't have the bills that we do as an adult, but they're still spending money. It's coming from somewhere and it's going to something. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for the parents to say, no, you don't have a budget, but let me show you what you are, spending in expenses monthly, so that they could at least get the idea of, oh, that's how it goes. Oh, that's how much those Jordans cost that I want. Yeah. Oh, that's how much that iPhone costs. So as long as it's just magically appearing, they don't understand. I think it's harder for them to understand that value and the role that money plays.
Yeah. I saw something not too long ago. I was in a store in Target, in fact, and I noticed that this woman had her daughter, and the daughter had a debit card. Mm-hmm. And the daughter had a couple of items, and the mother was explaining to the cashier, no, you ring this up. And she's telling the cashier, how are you today, miss? And, I mean, as if you would do with an adult. And I thought,
Mhm.
how interesting. And when it came time to pay, the cashier's looking at the mom and she said, she's paying.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
she put her debit card in
Right.
with her little, PIN number.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm literally standing there. I'm so fascinated at that because I thought, wow. And I have to tell you, this child could not have been maybe more than 6 or 7 years of age.
Wow.
So I know that it can be done. And I want our viewers to know that this is the role that you play. And it is so
Absolutely.
huge of getting kids into that and to start to recognize that difference between wants versus needs. And you talked about budget. It's interesting. I really wonder if anyone would be transparent enough that's watching the show today to say, you know what, I don't do a budget. I don't know how to do a budget.
Mhm.
And therefore I just look at and I go to my ATM and see how much money I got left in the account.
Right.
And we know a lot of people that do that, right?
We do. I really want to piggyback on something you said.
Okay.
That example of the young lady paying for, whatever the items are,
Mhm.
early exposure.
Yes.
Like, why would we not? We expose our children to music, to
Ooh.
videos,
Ooh.
to basketballs, and before they can walk, we have them dribbling or swinging. Or why not start talking to them about money earlier?
Yes.
And then we have a better chance of being more proficient at the idea of managing money if we can get exposed to that sooner. Let them, they're old enough to count and they're doing math. Let them count the change.
Yes.
Yeah, give the cashier the dollar. How much are you supposed to get back if that item is 25 cents? And really put the young person in a position of
Mm,
doing the math,
I like that. I
you
like.
know?
Yeah.
So yes, that's my thought on that. And in terms of transparency around being transparent about your budget or lack thereof, that's yet another reason why I entered this space, because I wanted to encourage open and honest conversation about this.
Mhm.
And it's good, I think, for an adult to acknowledge, you know what, I don't do that, and maybe challenge themselves to do it so that they can have the conversation
Right.
with their, because sometimes this is pushing us to be better. When our children come to us and they say, hey, where's your budget? And now you have to say, ooh, I don't have a budget. Let me get my budget together so we can have this conversation.
Right, right. And I can think back growing up as a kid, my parents didn't have a budget per se, the way maybe how we know it. But what my mom and dad did, they had a sheet of paper
Mm-hmm.
and they had a list of all the bills
Right.
and how much the bills, added up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people may scoff at this, but that's why my parents, we did layaway, right?
Yeah.
And I always was amazed at how do you lay away toys and things, but that bicycle, they were intuitive enough to know that by this age in Christmas, you would be able or old enough to ride a
Mm-hmm.
bicycle. So they put that bicycle on layaway. And we're thinking that these toys just magically appear.
Right. Right.
But literally, if you think about it, they were budgeting even back then for that. And so that's something that I think is really, really important that we really need to do with our children and start to set the tone and set them up for success. Because in the end, you mentioned how parents have their kids with a basketball or a baseball and a
Mm-hmm.
glove or all of these things. But at the same time, we need to make sure that they stay away from the sharks, the people when they get these huge NFL and NBA contracts, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
end up broke. And
Right.
there's so many stories about people who had millions of dollars, but because they didn't know how to budget their
Absolutely.
money.
And it's back to the principles and
Yes.
what I'm discussing in these basic financial management classes
Hmm.
are not sexy. You know, it's not the, oh, I invested in Bitcoin and I made $2 million. You know, all the things that catch your eye now, the glitter and the glam.
Right.
It's really back to the basics. Like you said, there's a piece of paper and the bills on the other side. How much is it costing you to live, and how much are you bringing in? Do you have anything left over? And if you don't, you have to start making some adjustments. If you do have something left over, hopefully, now we have to move to the next part of the conversation and talk about savings and savings goals. And do you have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up? You know, so it's very linear, the approach. But before you can know if you have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up, you have to know what your monthly expenses are. You know, and then it's a process. But again, this is not sexy. Nobody wants to hear this. Like, man, I know that already. Oh, really?
Yeah.
You know, we might know it, but do we practice it? And that's really what it comes down to. Because again, my message is it's going to rain. The rain is going to come sooner or later. And are you ready to absorb it? Will the rain fall off of you? Or will it soak through your clothes because you don't have the preparation to deal with it, you know, throughout its duration?
Yeah, those are real analogies that people can relate to. And what you were saying about the budget, I mean, it's quite sobering when you sit down and parents sit down and say, this is how much money I make. And this is how much it costs us to live here in this home. This is whether it's rent, whether it's a mortgage. This is what it's costing us to pay for you to drive around in a car to get back and forth to school, which is why when you don't take care of the car and we've got to repair it, those are sobering facts that people have to stop and look at and say, oh, and I think for a lot of kids, if it's put out there like that to them, maybe, just maybe, that would start them to think, you know what? Wait a minute. I'm asking this of my mom and dad, and, you know, how are they eating? How are they living? Because kids they're not looking at that. They don't see that you've given them the best part of the meat, the chicken, right? And you're eating what's left on the bone, or, you know, the skin. And so it's those things. So to hear you talk about that, I'm like, oh my goodness. But look, let me just move in and quickly ask you this.
Okay, yeah, because you know we will talk all night, because I want to jump in on some of the things you just said. But okay, next question.
All right. So what are some questions to ask children to get them to think critically about money? Because there's a way that you can do that and get them into that thought process. So how do you approach that?
I'm going to go back to the question about how much does it cost you to live? I think that's an excellent place to start. Shoes, the new sneakers, the hat, the uniform for the team that they're playing on, just like all of these little things, starting to have those conversations. So again, that they understand that the money just doesn't magically appear. That's where I would start. I would ask them what their goals were. Like, is there anything that you want to save up for? You know, it seems like long gone are the days when we actually save up for something. To your point about layaway, you know, that's exactly what we were doing. What are your goals? And maybe they have a goal to, I don't know. I want to buy a video game. Again, I'm just making up something. Okay, let's save up for it. Show me how much you have in your account now. What do you have towards the video game today? And then we do a roadmap. Okay, and in 2 weeks, then you should have, you know, double that or half of that, and move them towards establishing a goal so that they understand that it's a process.
Right.
And that's layaway essentially.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Yeah.
Right. Oh, and the other piece I'd like to say is there was a time when we were comfortable saying, I can't afford it. And there's no shame in it. You know, I'm just not going to be able. I'm not going to be able to do it. Sorry.
Right.
There are other things that are priorities, and I cannot.
Right.
And the babies get over it. They'll understand.
Yeah.
You know.
That, I mean, oh my gosh, this is just key. We've got comments. We've got, people say they love the ideas. Also, I love this one. One of you says allowances can also lend
Yes.
children to budget. And the interesting thing about that, there's this. I hear pros and cons. There are parents that say, I don't need to give them allowance. I pay all the bills. So what should I? But again, taking the avenue that you're teaching them how to manage money.
Exactly.
And I think at the same time, you will also learn some things too. So that's really, really important. And I love that. What do you say? You just got to say, I can't afford it.
Can't afford it.
Mama ain't got it.
Can't do it.
Right.
And to that allowances point, I think that's a very, very good point. And to me, that goes into the revenue column. That goes into what are you bringing in? The holidays are coming up. For those that are fortunate enough to be able to exchange gifts or get money, that money needs to go somewhere. And there needs to be a conversation around how much of that money are you saving for later, as opposed to spending it all. Again, we have the opportunities for teaching right in front of us, and we just have to be willing to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, when we come back, or you guys, we're as you can figure it out, we're talking about financial literacy as it relates to our young people. And my guest, Mr. Tyehimba Jelani, as you could tell, brother is just fire. He's on point with so many things. And so I'm going to pose this question. We're going to pause for the calls for a moment. But the question is, in your opinion, should there be classes that lay the groundwork in schools for children to learn about or to be introduced to financial literacy? And we talked about that, but I want to tag on is the fact that teaching these children to develop that critical thinking skills. And that's the buzzword, critical thinking skills about money. So when we come back, I'm going to let you, think about that. And we'll be right back, guys. Thank you so much for your comments and for your questions. And shout out to all of you, Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas. Thank you guys so much for hanging in here. I appreciate your comments and I appreciate you being here. We'll be right back.
Recently, the western U.S. has averaged more than 1,900 earthquakes and 3,800 significant wildfires each year. So chances are there will be more of both near here again. And between school, sports, and social lives, chances are you won't be with your kids when it happens. Will they know what to do? Ready.gov/kids has all the educational tools and information to make the conversation easy. When the time comes, chances are they'll feel prepared, not scared. So talk with your family today.
Let's get back to talking smack with a side of mac and cheese.
Before we can safely come together, we need the facts on COVID-19 vaccines.
To get the facts, visit getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
All right. I want to thank you guys for hanging in here. You're tuned in to the You Didn't Get the Memo show, which airs every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And with my awesome guest today, Mr. Tyehimba Jelani, who's the president and founder of Tyehimba and Associates. As a financial literacy educator, you guys, this is information that we need to make sure we can't talk enough about it, right? We just can't. Every decision that you make, it will have that impact, and the financial impact could be lifelong. There are some people I hear say, I can never get a leg up. I can never get out the hole. And so before we went to break, I posed a question to Tyehimba about, what are his thoughts about classes laying the groundwork, schools laying the groundwork for our children to be introduced to financial literacy. And again, I ask that because I've heard different concepts. Some people say that should be taught at home, but again,
Right.
What are we really talking about
Mhm.
if you have parents that really didn't have that type of education? And then there are other schools, I think, that are starting to adopt more about some of the basic things because it can be introduced in a simple, like you said, in kindergarten, counting, what's five?
Mhm.
Look, we used to
Mhm.
say take away, not subtract.
Right,
Five,
right,
take,
right,
what's
right.
five? Take away three.
Right.
So, but just share with us what are your thoughts because it comes down to developing critical thinking skills around money management.
Mhm. Yeah. So the answer to that question is absolutely. Personal financial literacy should be taught in schools. It is, dare I say, a travesty that it is not, because so much of what we do again revolves around money and your ability to manage it effectively. Now, I'll say this, I'll use this as a shameless plug. If you are in a school district that does not teach financial literacy and you want to bring in a family group of consultants to pass on some of this information, here we are. So I've
Right.
done a couple colleges, one high school district in particular. So this is the need that we want to fill as Tayimba and Associates.
Yeah.
I'm
And need I
providing.
say, I'm sorry, but need I say, and you do travel.
Absolutely, absolutely, and so much is virtual now. We can get it done, but
There you go.
all jokes aside, it really should be taught in school, and we should not have to, again, come in and at what we're doing as an organization, come in and convince administrators of the importance of talking about budgets and savings and bank accounts and credit when we know it's right around the corner for them.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Right. Absolutely. One of our viewers just commented that as parents, we must supplement what our children are taught in school. And that's a very, very valid point.
Mhm.
But it shouldn't be any shame in the parents' game if they
Mhm.
really don't know.
Right.
Because I really and truly think far and beyond, there are more teachers who would be willing to help a parent understand what you're teaching my child so that I can learn it as well. And at the same time, to augment what it is that you're
Mhm.
doing to
Yeah.
help my child be so much better. And that is just the critical piece. And and parents, you got to go to school. You got to know what's
Absolutely.
being taught.
Absolutely. So in 2011, a group of us from NABA founded a nonprofit called Life Courses.
Hmm.
And Life Courses focused on middle school students and their parents, providing financial education and entrepreneurship training. When we understood how important it was to have the parents involved in the conversation. So whether you know or don't know, again, there's no shame in not knowing. The point is we should all be working together to make for a more informed, better positioned young person. So absolutely. The good thing is, I think now, I hear so much about these different financial education programs at churches, online. Like there's a lot to choose from, which is a good thing. And now it's just about finding an organization, an individual, an instructor that you're comfortable with sharing that information or learning from.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and at the same time, though, look, let me stick a pin in this. I don't
All
want to
right.
step on somebody's toes, but at the same time, we have to be very careful. The reason why you're on this show is because one, you were vetted. Number two, you have done an excellent job with the programs that
Mm-hmm.
you have brought forward. Because a lot of people will say, "Oh yeah, we're teaching this, but where's the curriculum?"
Right, right, right.
I need to understand what it is, and for me, I need to I need to know what's the plan here, what's the program, what are the objectives of this, and a
Mhm.
lot of that you're not getting. So I just want to say to those of you that if you're online and saying, "Oh yeah, I took this," and if you still find that you're still in the same rut that you were in when you started it, then I would say that that's a problem. So I really have to give a shout out to what you and your team are doing in
Thank you.
that regard, right?
Yeah.
So, again, you kind of delved into it and actually you more or less answered it, but I'm just going to ask you to talk about your approach to teaching children about finances if their parents weren't taught, because there has to be a level of difficulty there, and especially if you got one parent. Well, if it's a one parent household,
Mhm.
maybe, but if you got one or two parent household and one parent is not as in tune to financial management
Mhm.
as the
Mhm.
other parent, as we all know, 90% of the divorces end up it, because of financial matters,
Mm.
financial
Yeah.
problems there. So your approach to teaching children about finances, how do you go about that if their parents weren't taught? Do you have a conversation with the parents first, or with the parent and the child, and just how difficult in your experience has this been for you?
So it totally depends on the context. I reference life courses. Life courses, we would host events and we would bring parents and students to us. So we would be under the same roof. We might, break out in individual sessions, parents on one side, students on the other, but we were all having the conversation collectively. Other times, I'm just working with students. There's a good friend of mine has actually asked me to come and teach to her friends, family, and students. So I'm doing that in January. So it can look many different ways, but at the end of the day, my starting point is I'm here to share the information. There is no judgment. I trust me, I done made enough of my own mistakes to not point fingers at someone else.
Right,
So
right,
I want everyone to be comfortable. And that's where, and I approach that with the students the same way. I'm
right.
just trying to give you the information. I'll ask you some questions, but approach again, very basic. I say basic, but I shouldn't say it like that. Budget. Have you spent some time putting pen to paper to know how much you bring in, how much goes out, and how much is left over? If you've
Right.
done that, have you established your expenses? How close are you to your expenses goal of 3 to 6 months, having that saved up?
Mm, mm.
From there, and we talk about bank accounts. Where is that money? Where are you holding that money? Is it in a shoebox? Is it in a drawer? We all got our stash, and
Mhm.
nothing wrong with having a
True, true, true.
little run money somewhere in case you need it quickly. But we know that when you're starting to deal with larger quantities of money, you probably
Mhm.
want that in a place that's a little more secure. So we
Right.
want you to start considering some bank account type facility.
Mhm.
And then we'll talk about credit. Because
Mm.
again, eventually borrowing, interest rate, debt, we have to have
Ooh.
that conversation on some level.
Yes.
Now, the other approach, now what also impacts my approach is how much time do I have? What I want, my vision for Tayeb and Associates and the holistic program that we bring to a school district, let's say, is that we have an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half a session, and that we would do it, consecutively, maybe 3 or 4 days at a time. That way we can have an interactive session, we can do some follow-up, we can talk a little bit more and dig into these concepts a little further.
Mhm.
What I'm finding is because of, just time constraints, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So we only can do so much in
Right.
that short time frame. So again, it's just finding a way to get as much content to make it as interactive as possible,
Mhm.
to make participants as comfortable as possible to have a conversation about money, because again, it's
Right.
not something that we're used to talking about. So, there can just be many issues that come up with it that make people a little bit more reluctant to share. But
Right. Right.
I'm a sharer, so I'm gonna tell you some of the mistakes I made, and hopefully that will make you feel more comfortable in having some of those
Yeah.
conversations.
And that's really and truly what it's all about. It's about life experiences. And my whole thing is I don't want someone to make the same mistakes that I made. Right.
Absolutely. Yes.
And once you dig yourself out of a hole, and I can say I've been there, right? And most people, I use this term, but even though jokingly, but it's real. Most people are one paycheck away from poverty because they have not done all of these things. So I appreciate the transparency, and as you know, that's how I always end in anything I say to you authentically. I love the authenticity of what it is that you're talking about, and that's really important. Look, I want to just share with you, we've got Arizona tuning in. All right,
Hey,
Arizona. Thank you.
Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona. Thank you.
Yeah.
But also, one of the viewers said that they believe this should be taught before a child graduates. And that's why we're having this conversation, because a lot of times children can impact their parents too.
Yes,
And I
they
think
can.
that we don't give enough credence to that. So if your child is being taught that and they can bring it home and teach you, it makes all the difference in the world. Now, look, we're going to take a really, really, really quick break. And so when we come back, I want us to talk about how can we create opportunities for our children to earn money, and along with, understanding the importance of being able to save and what we need to do. So guys, don't you go away at all. We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching the You Didn't Get the Memo show with your inspirational host, Gloria Bailey Ray. It's your contributions that make this happen. To become a sponsor, send an email to youdidn'tgetthememo@gmail. That's the letter U, didn't get the memo. If you're not in a space to be a sponsor, but you like what you hear, we simply ask that you support what you like by making a contribution to the show. There are 3 ways to make an online donation. Visit paypal.me/Gloria Bailey Ray or Cash App or Venmo, Gloria Bailey Ray. Give what you can. Your support is appreciated.
All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging in here. I love the comments. I really, really appreciate you guys just really being involved. And that's the beauty of this particular platform. It allows you to ask questions, make comments. And if you have questions, I've been putting up all throughout how you can actually contact Tahimba, whether it's for your school, whether it's for your church, or whether you just, you and a group of friends. We need to know, we need to learn to live debt free. Not credit card, live on credit cards. And that is so vitally important. So I thank my guests so very much for being here and for sharing this information. Before we went to break, one of the questions that I had posed was, how can we create opportunities for our children to earn money? Now, look, I told you I'm a Southern woman, and one of the things I remember growing up, look, date myself, I think you still do this. You know what? Selling candy bars, selling lemonade, having lemonade stands. And I know that we've gotten, my grandkids are into, the whole sneaker thing and selling, and they try to explain it to them like this. That's way above my pay grade. But the thing is, what are some of the things that, just simple, basic things that we can create opportunities to earn money? And that means for y'all with your kids and your grandkids, they may have to put a little muscle behind what they're doing.
Yes, there you go. Say it.
I'm just being real. Hard work ain't never hurt nobody.
Say it again.
So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on that. I think there are plenty of opportunities to make money, and it's just about your child's personality. And this is why I go back to the conversation around, what are you passionate about? And this is the question to the young people. What are you passionate about? What are you good at? What would you do for free, but you'll take the check if they give it to you? And I think they are so talented. Do they like to read? Do they play an instrument? Do they play sports? My niece, she was sewing blankets at one point. Like, there are so many things that can be done, but they have to tap into what is interesting to them. And maybe they can make money doing that because there's someone who will pay them for what that particular service is. Or I don't know, maybe they're good at Spanish. Be a tutor. I'm sure there's some students in your class that may be struggling on the Spanish side. Offer to tutor them for a couple extra dollars. Like, those are the things to me that we can start being more creative with. But I also want to echo what you say. You know, we come from that school. Look, you don't necessarily get no money for washing the dishes. That's your chore. Now, if you get out and do something extra, maybe you wash the cars or you mow the lawn, you know, you pick up something, move something, then okay, you can get a little extra dollars in your pocket. But I am with you. There is nothing wrong with hard work. Interestingly enough, again, this is just observational. It appears that there are more young people who are not working for whatever reason. I don't know if that means, you know, it's more on the athletic side. The parents may want them to focus more on education. But, you know, 15 and a half, we had work permits.
Ooh.
We were already kicking in the door at your local fast food restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So we were learning the value of hard work, flipping burgers over the fries, whatever the case may be, hard work and collecting a check. Now, you know, hopefully your parents probably said, okay, you don't have to give me your whole check, but there was something that you were expected to pay for as a result of the fact that you were working.
Right.
So I think if you have a young person who doesn't have to work for whatever reason, meaning really go and punch somebody's clock, then they need to do some entrepreneurial efforts, or they need to connect and start doing some work around somebody's house so that they can start, you know, what does it mean to show up on time, to be a person of your word, you know, to get the money, to learn how to collect, to learn how to have a conversation about getting, you know, all of that is invaluable from a maturity standpoint. So that's my 2 cents. And again, no judgment, just an observation.
Yeah, but you know, let me just tack on to, if parents allow, I understand the whole sports thing. Like I said, look, I don't even know how kids got more, their social calendars got more stuff going on than I ever did. But when you're working on a job, you know, one of the other things that it does, it teaches you how to deal with different personalities. Because everybody that comes into that fast food restaurant, they're not very nice, right? And so you're also learning how to deal with these different types of personalities. That's why it's important. And as a result of that, you do make an excellent point. Now, most parents that I talk to that actually take some money from their child's paycheck, they're actually putting it away in a savings account for them. They really aren't charging rent, but what it's teaching them is, look, when you're budgeting, you got to budget for rent. You know what? Every time you flick that light switch on or hit that remote and you're watching Netflix and you watch, all of that costs money. So how do we deal with that? And I think that's really important. I'm all for this, but we got to teach our kids the piece about volunteering.
Absolutely.
Because there's value in that too, in giving back, right? We have to teach them, because then they get a chance to see how fortunate they really and truly are. So
I agree.
You know,
may I add one element to this, opportunities to earn money?
Sure.
And specifically, if you're a high school student or a college student, apply for scholarships. I have been involved with so many nonprofits that are begging some student to apply for just fill out the application so they can write you the check. So I think we, collectively speaking, again, this is observational, we leave a lot of money on the table because we don't want to just simply take the time to apply for the scholarship.
Yes.
And I'm not hearing school is too expensive if you haven't applied for one scholarship at all. So I think that's a huge opportunity that students miss, that I encourage them to take responsibility for.
Yeah, I agree with you. And parents have to stop babying, this is why we have a lot of what we're seeing right now. And this conversation will lend itself to kids understanding wants versus needs, why you need to save up for whatever it is that you want and not go out and go rogue and robbing people and stealing things, because that's just for that moment. And do you really want to spend the rest of your life because of one bad decision? So parents, we also grandparents, we have that responsibility. I know I talk till I'm blue in the face with mine and anybody that I can meet, but I do feel that it is so critical. So I'm going to just show, we have one other comment. Gina is on point today. And parents has the means, they can sponsor their child doing community service, volunteer work. Organization wins, child win. All right, Miss Gina from Arizona. Thank you.
Yes.
For that. I really and truly appreciate it. But Jelani, let me just move to this.
Okay.
What are the areas that parents tend to overlook when it comes to making financial decisions? And what are some tips to help an individual stay on top of keeping their finances in tip-top shape? Look, in 2 to 3 minutes.
Oh, right. All of that, huh? Right. I had a mentor that asked us the question in college: how much is enough? And he really, was trying to get at, there's always going to be something to buy. Now we have these computers in our pockets, doubling as cell phones. There's always somebody selling you something. So one of my suggestions is just learning how to say no, how to ignore the noise, not to get so caught up in the consumer culture that, we make decisions that, again, put our back against the wall. I still believe it starts with knowing how much you bring in, knowing how much is going out, and knowing how much is left over. Everything else is built off of that. And we all want to get to the point where we're talking about investing. And the only way to get in, since investing is a long-term strategy, the only way to get there is you have to have your basics covered. So that then when you start to move into investing, you can put money somewhere that it can begin working for you. So how to keep tip-top shape? Stay present with what's going in and out of your account. Be honest with yourself about what you need and what versus what you want. And, being okay with what I say doing without, it's all right.
And a lot of times when you just wait, there's something about being patient too, right? And
right.
So when you're patient, the things that you run out, how many times have you gone out and you've purchased something because you just had to have it, and then it goes on sale 3 months later? And I mean, it's a huge sale, 50%. And you're saying, I spent $200 for this and I could have got it for $100. So it's also about the patient piece. But, Tahimba, I always hate when we got to get to this point, but what do you want viewers watching the show today to take away?
One is, if you have a young person whose ear you have, and sometimes that's your child and sometimes it's not. We all know, we can hear things from our parents all day long and we ignore it, but some stranger tells it to us and all of a sudden we think it's the best thing since sliced bread. So my message is, if you have the ear of a young person, take some time to talk to them honestly about money. Just ask them some of the basic questions to see where their head's at. What are their goals? Because that's where it starts at, is we have to get comfortable having these sorts of conversations. Not super invasive. I don't need to know all your business, but are you thinking about these things? So that would be my first step.
Yeah. Okay.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and then two, again, let's talk. It really does come down to conversation and be committed to making a difference and passing on that information.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jelani, don't you go anywhere. I will be right back with you. I'm going to say to the viewers, I want to first of all thank you guys so much for tuning in. One thing I neglected to do at the very beginning of the show, listen, y'all, I promised these three individuals I'm going to give them a shout out. Judith, who's the front cashier at Home Depot, Crystal, who's the manager, and Shedrick, who is, let me just tell you, the bomb diggity. Guys, I want to shout you out because you embody what it's like to really give great customer service. And I told you that I would give you that on the show. I want to thank again my guest, Mr. Tahimba Jelani, for being on the show today. Here's a gentle reminder to ask all of you to support our efforts so that we continue to bring these types of guests and information to you. At the same time, if you are wanting to become a sponsor, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a business, whether small or large, inquire about our sponsorship packages. I will say this, that if you are not in the space to become a sponsor, again, you can still make that donation. Hey, I want you to understand that there is a blessing in the giving. Be sure and follow me on all of my social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I'm all over. And more importantly, to mark your calendars for every Tuesday, 5 p.m., for always a great show on You Didn't Get the Memo. I'm just feel so honored and just blessed. I want to say, some of you guys, it's holiday season. And if you're in need of some midweek inspiration, be sure and tune into my podcast, Real Talk with Lady G, every Thursday from 6 to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Spreaker.com. Spreaker.com. It's real topics, real adult conversation. I want to just remind you that, as always, it's been a blast. And I always say this, if you didn't take anything away from today's show, then it's really you who didn't get the memo. My thought for the week is this. Remember always, the quality of your life is determined by the decisions that you make. Until this time next week, guys, be well, pay it forward, know how blessed you really and truly are, and have an awesome rest of the week. I'm your host, Gloria Bailey Ray, and you've been tuned in to You Didn't Get the Memo.